Today we're going to explore, why do we need an electoral college? Everyone's vote should count, right? Well, let's first break down how the Electoral College currently works. The first objection against the Electoral College is the system doesn't represent a vote from every citizen. Actually, electors represent all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Each state gets an elector for each member of the House and 2 for the senators. The District of Columbia is allotted 3 electors. Each candidate is represented by their electors pending state laws. Maine and Nebraska give their state winner 2 electors, and the winner of each congressional district gets 1 elector. When we vote on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, the electors are actually who you're voting for, your candidate's electors. But why don't we just use the popular vote? This is a big problem now with the Electoral College. As it stands, each winner of the state takes all the electoral votes except for Maine and Nebraska. All states except for Maine and Nebraska already award their electoral votes to the popular candidate. Each state's governor prepares a certificate of ascertainment with a list of the winners and sends the list to Congress and the National Archives. They will represent your state in December. The first Monday after the second Wednesday in December, the electors cast the results of the state vote onto 2 separate ballots, the vice president and the president. These votes are considered official certificates of votes and are sent to the Congress and the National Archives. But doesn't that mean that the system is rigged? On January 6th of the new year following the election, electoral votes are counted in a joint session of Congress for integrity. The Vice President and the President of the Senate presides over the account and announce the official results. It's important to remember that this is a 2-part process. First, a political party nominates a list of candidates. Next, the voters vote for their party's electors based on that list of candidates. Maine and Nebraska proportionally distributes their electoral votes to the winners of the state and each congressional district. They are the only 2 states that do not award their popular winner with the electoral votes. But shouldn't 1 person equal 1 vote? A quote from James Madison. From this view of the subject, it may be concluded that a pure democracy, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens who assemble and administer the government in person, can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of faction. A common passion or interest will, in almost every case, be felt by a majority of the whole. A communication and concert result from the form of government itself, and there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. Hence it is that such democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Theoretic politicians who have patronized this species of government have erroneously supposed that by reducing mankind to a perfect equality in their political rights, they would, at the same time, be perfectly equalized and assimilated in their possessions, their opinions, and their passions. The Union as a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection from the New York Packet, Friday, November 23, 1787, James Madison. Madison is warning of a democratic takeover of the republic if a smaller group is forced to live by a majority vote. He also noted how the nations he has observed to be democratic have failed. But politicians will campaign in more states if we abolish the Electoral College. Voter registration records compared to voter turnout determine that from the year 2000 until the present, only about half of the eligible voters in the states are heading to the polls. Presidential elections see higher turnout rates than general elections. The average turnout for a general election varies in each state, but it is significantly lower than all presidential election turnouts. The lack of participation in the full election process may be behind some of the frustrations felt by those who oppose the Electoral College. If each person were to equal one vote, a potential candidate would get more votes from a more densely populated state and would likely ignore the states with lower populations. It would boil down into a percentage matter, and everybody knows that the more people that you get compared to the less people that you get will equal a higher percentage rate and therefore more inclined to be elected as president. But the winner take all should apply to the national popular vote, not the state vote, right? Well, if the winner takes all applied to the national popular vote, it would null and void the minority votes in the smaller populated states. This action is something that the Electoral College is already accused of, suppressing minority votes. The Founding Fathers knew the dangers of a democracy to those considered minorities and realized that the voting system could be easily hijacked if a failsafe wasn't in place. Madison said it best: as each representative will be chosen by a greater number of citizens in the large than in the small republic, it will be more difficult for unworthy candidates to practice with success the vicious arts by which elections are too often carried, and the suffrages of the people, being more free, will be more likely to center in the men who possess the most attractive merit and the most diffusive and established characters. This just means that we are taking the most qualified individuals and putting them into a position to make the best list of candidates for our country. What we have here is an empty Electoral College map. It's a blank map of the states and how many electoral votes each state gets according to the population representation. The idea that a state-by-state winner-takes-all is outdated brushes over the fact that the percentage will drastically change when you add inhabitants of the population. In other words, it makes the playing field uneven. This is a map of the population density of America in 2016. The light blue represents less populated counties, and the dark blue represents densely populated counties. If a national popular vote were to go into effect, the dark blue areas would outweigh the entire rest of the country. So my question is, a national popular vote would be dictated by these areas. Do they speak for you? Your vote counts. And in conclusion, each state is equally and fairly represented by the Electoral College. To have the maximum impact at the polls, you should participate in as many local and state elections as you can, not just presidential elections, because those representatives that are elected during the general elections are the ones compiling the list of candidates for your party. If you don't agree with the legislators in your state, how can you trust the candidates they choose? The answer is you can't. But we shouldn't place the blame on the system of the Electoral College. The Electoral College keeps our voting system fair and balanced. It is truly in the hands of the voters. We need to be as educated and involved in the voting process as we possibly can to make sure that we get the most qualified candidates to represent our state and our country. I hope you enjoyed the content, and thank you so much for subscribing. Remember to like and share and leave a comment at the bottom.